All right, Blue Jays fans, we need to talk right now because the front office just made a move that's flying under the radar. But honestly, it could end up being one of the most important decisions of this entire offseason. I am talking about a roster move that has massive implications for spring training, for the bullpen, potentially even for the rotation, and definitely for how this team is going to approach the next few months leading up to Open A. And here is the thing. Not enough people are connecting the dots on what this actually means. We're also going to get into some free agency updates that dropped today, some qualifying offer decisions that are genuinely shocking, and a trade possibility that has me thinking about how creative the Blue Jays might need to get this winter. This isn't just your typical roster news. This is the kind of stuff that shakes the entire direction of a franchise heading into a critical season. So if you are not subscribed yet, do that right now because we're breaking down everything you need to know. And trust me, you are going to want to hear all of this before you talk Blue Jays baseball with anyone else. Let's get into it. The Blue Jays just announced they've added Ricky Tiedemann to the 40-man roster. And I know some of you are probably thinking, okay, that's cool, but why does this matter so much? Let me tell you exactly why this is a bigger deal than it might seem on the surface. First off, this move protects Tiedemann from the Rule 5 draft, which was absolutely necessary. You cannot let a talent like this get picked up by another organization. But more importantly, this signals that the Blue Jays believe Ricky Tiedemann is going to be a major part of this team's future, and that future might arrive sooner than people think. We're talking about a guy who was once the top prospect in the entire system, a left-handed pitcher who was sitting upper 90s, touching 99, maybe even flirting with triple digits at times. His changeup was absolutely filthy. When he was healthy and rolling through the minors, people were talking about him like he was a future ace. Then the injuries hit, and everything got. D-Rail Tiedemann underwent Tommy John surgery back in July of 2024, and he hasn't pitched in a game since. That's a long time. But here's what makes this interesting. Reports on his rehab have been really encouraging. He's been targeting a return, and now that he's on the 40-man roster, he's going to get his shot in spring training. And if you remember what Tiedemann looked like a couple years ago when he dominated major league hitters during spring training before he got hurt, you know exactly what kind of potential we're talking about here. This isn't just some organizational depth piece. This is a guy who could legitimately break out and become one of the most important pitchers on this staff. Now, realistically, why I am not expecting him to step into the starting rotation right away. He's going to need time to build back up. He'll probably start the season in AAA, get stretched out, work on his command, make sure the arm is fully healthy. But here's where it gets really intriguing. If the Blue Jays want to be aggressive, Tiedemann could be an absolute weapon coming out of the bullpen. Think about it. A left-handed power arm who can sit mid to upper 90s with a devastating changeup. That plays immediately in high-leverage situations. If he comes into spring training and looks sharp, here is no reason he couldn't be in Toronto by mid-season, maybe even earlier, if the bullpen needs help. And let's be honest, the Blue Jays bullpen could definitely use another impact arm. So this isn't just about protecting a prospect from the Rule 5 draft. This is about the Blue Jays potentially unlocking a huge asset that could make a real difference in 2026. Tiedemann is only 23 years old. He's got plenty of time to develop into a starting pitcher long term, but in the short term, he could be exactly what this team needs to add some depth and firepower to the bullpen. And if he stays healthy and continues progressing, we could be looking at someone who becomes a legitimate star. That's the kind of upside you can't ignore. Now, adding Tiedemann to the 40-man roster also means the Blue Jays are at 38 of their 40 spots. They got until November 21st to finalize the last two moves, and you better believe they're going to be trimming the roster to make room for whatever else they've got planned this offseason. We know the Blue Jays are going to be aggressive. Ross Atkins has said it. The players have said it. The fan base is demanding it. So guys like Justin Turner, Paxton Schultz, Ethan Lucas, maybe even Angel Bastardo, some of these names could be on the way out to create space for new additions. And that Rule 5 draft is going to be nerve-wracking because there are other prospects the Blue Jays would love to protect, but just don't have room for. Guys like Jose Kastovich, who the organization really likes. So this is a balancing act. but protecting Tiedemann was absolutely the right call. You don't let talent like that get away. Let's switch gears and talk about the qualifying offer situation, because today was the deadline, and some of these decisions are wild. Bob Bassett rejected the Blue Jays qualifying offer, which honestly nobody is surprised about. He's going to test free agency, and if he signs elsewhere, Toronto gets a compensatory draft pick after the fourth round in the 2026 draft. Look, I hope he re-signs. That fourth round pick isn't going to move the needle much, and Bassett was solid for the Blue Jays. But if he decides to go somewhere else, at least Toronto gets something in return. What's really interesting, though, is how many players actually accepted their qualifying offers today. Trenton Grisham accepted the Yankees qualifying offer. That's shocking. Most people thought he was going to test the market, maybe get a long-term deal worth over $100 million. Instead, he's coming back to the Yankees on a one-year deal worth around $21 or $22 million. The Yankees probably gave him that qualifying offer, thinking he'd reject it. They get a draft pick, and they'd move on. Now they're locked into that money with a player who, let's be real, was pretty bad in the playoffs and could easily have a down year next season. Brandon Woodruff returned to the Brewers. Shota Imanaga is back with the Cubs. Tariq Skubal returned to the Tigers. These are all guys who were expected to potentially explore free agency, and instead they took the guaranteed money. It's fascinating because it shows how uncertain the market feels right now for some of these players. Maybe they looked at the numbers and thought, you know what, $21 million guaranteed is better than risking it and potentially getting less in free agency. Or maybe teams are just being smarter about how they structure these qualifying offers. Either way, it's going to have a ripple effect on the rest of the market, because now there are fewer big-name players available, which could drive up the price for the ones who are still out there. And that could impact the Blue Jays' plans depending on who they're targeting. One other name I want to throw out there for discussion, Lane Thomas. He's hitting free agency at 30 years old after an injury-plagued season. Zach Hampel mentioned him as someone the Blue Jays should look into because even though he had a rough year, his bat speed is still there, and he absolutely masses left-handed pitching. Now, I am not completely sold on this idea. Lane Thomas had a bad season, and yeah, injuries played a role, but you gotta wonder if he's really an upgrade over what the Blue Jays already have. Miles Straw provides similar defense and speed, and even though Lane Thomas is definitely a better hitter on his career than Straw has ever been, is it worth bringing in elsewhere? I think if the Blue Jays are going to upgrade the outfield, they need to go bigger than Lane Thomas. But I am curious what you think. Would you rather stick with guys like Miles Straw who bring that clubhouse energy and defense, or would you rather take a chance on Lane Thomas and hope he bounces back? Let me know in the comments. Here's the bottom line. Blue Jays Nation. The Ricky Tiedemann move is huge. It protects a potential star from being